Alright, today I'm going to be changing brake pads on a 2004 Hilux or a KNZ 165. Here's the stuff I use. It's got a bottle jack, it's a Toyota bottle jack. I've got a breaker bar, 19mm socket, some long nose pliers. Got the new brake pads, some brake cleaner, 2 screwdrivers, one large one. Uses a bit of a pry bar, head torch, and just a manual in case I get stuck along the way. So tune in and we'll get it done. First thing, just gonna open the bonnet. Just underneath the bonnet here, I'm just gonna open up the cap on the master cylinder. That means when I push the pistons back, the extra brake fluid will have somewhere to, open up into. There's not so much pressure when I'm pushing them back. So just crack the cap on that one. Don't want to have it open for too long because you don't want moisture getting in, but just enough time to get those brake pads in and close it back up. Next thing, I just want to crack the nuts while the wheel's still on the ground, so the wheel doesn't move around. So just get this breaker bar on. I'm just loosening up those nuts one by one. Helps if you've got some extra leverage. Obviously a rattle gun's even better again, but breaker bar does the job just fine. Next thing is I'm just going to find a place to place this bottle jack. You want to look underneath the car, find a suitable spot where it's not going to slip. It's got a strong base on this, that's not really much risk, but it's just good practice anyway. Lower it down a bit and then just do it up by hand so it doesn't wriggle around. Next I'm just going to grab a tool to put the jack up, slide that in and jack up the wheel. You don't need it off the ground too much, just enough to get the wheel off. It's up too high, it's hard to lift these big tyres back on, so I just like to just inch it off the ground. That should be fine there. I'll slip that off so I don't trip on it. Keep it on the car. Alright, now I've cracked those nuts, so I'll just shrink that breaker bar right down and just finish off getting the tension off those nuts. And I'll just spin them off by hand. When you loosen the other nuts, sometimes the wheel will bite onto nuts that are a bit tighter, so you just spin them off. We'll keep those somewhere safe. Now all those nuts are off, that tie's completely loose, so I'll just slide under, save my back and use just some good leverage to lift that tyre off. Be careful of the hub, and that's good there. I'll slide that underneath the car in case that bottle jack is to fail. It's just good practice. They're great jacks, but you never know, so it's just a good safety precaution. Now that wheel's off, gives us a good look at that caliper and those pads that need replacing. So let's get in on. Alright, so having a look at this caliper and the brake pads. Obviously the brake pads inside there and they're held in by these retaining pins. Then the retaining pins are held in by a retaining spring. So we'll get that spring off first, and that'll allow us, there's an inner spring as well, but that'll come out when we slide these pins out. So we'll get that spring off first, slide those pins out, and that'll give us access to these pads. So just grabbing those long nose pliers, you want to be careful because you don't want to bend that spring out of shape too much, but just slowly working it out, like that. And then on the bottom side as well, like that. On this Toyota, all it does is just rotates out of that hole. You can see that, so it rotates out. That's the retaining spring out. Keep that somewhere safe next to the wheel nuts. Next thing is these pins. Usually they do get a bit stuck. but they're not too bad. I think I lubed them up last time I did this job, so not too bad. And again, just grabbing those long nose pliers, sliding those pins out. There's one there. And for that bottom pin, what we're going to do is just ease the tension off with that spring first. So I'd like to get a good grip on that. Just pull that out, pull that out. That just relieves a bit of tension on that pin. As you can see, I can move it with my finger then and pull that second pin out. So there's that second pin, and then there's that retaining clip. So keep that one safe. All right, so here's our calipers here. So we're going to try and slide these out. Now usually the calipers are the pistons. These are 4 pistons, there's 2 on each side, and that's what actually actuates the brake pad onto the brake rotor. So we've got to move those pistons back very carefully. And with those pistons holding in the pads, they are quite firm. So what I like to do is just use a screwdriver and just edge them out a little bit at a time, using those holes. If they get stuck, just move to the other side. There we go, there's a bit of movement there. Slow and steady, you don't want to force it too hard. Just edging them out. When you can get a grip on it, put the screwdriver right through and pull them out. Beautiful, so there's one pad there. You can see there's quite a bit of wear. It's quite low, there's still a bit of life left in it. But if I compare that to the new pad, you can see how much more material's on that. So it's a good time to change them before they get too low. Let's pull that second one out. It's a bit awkward coming from the other way. Slow and steady, you get them out. Beautiful, and there's that second one. Again, not much life left on that, so it's good by changing them. Now, as you can see, those pistons are they're quite low. They're quite far in. That's because the brakes have been actuating with these pads that don't have much material on them. So if you tried to fit these pads in now, there's physically not enough room that way because of all that extra material. So we have to move those pistons back. So that's what I use this large screwdriver for. So I'm just gonna, this is not ideal, there is a specialty tool for this, but I don't have it. So I'm just gonna wrap a flathead screwdriver in a bit of cloth. I'm gonna force it, not too firm, but just a bit inside, and just slowly push those pistons back. Now the thing is, with these pistons, if you push one all the way in, the other tends to come out. So you sort of have to evenly do it, so there's enough room to slide that new brake pad in. So slowly moving them. As you can see how I push that one all the way in, and then that one pops out. So it's just about getting it nice and even, so we can slide that in. All right, so now an important thing to do is just to double check that they actually are the right pads. When I went to the parts shop, they did a registration check on my car, so they should be, but it's always good just to double check that they do line up. So here's the new pad here. Excuse the dirty hands, should have worn gloves. And then, as you can see, that's the matching one. They're actually different, so you want to make sure when you get them out the box that you're getting the two of the right ones, because 2 different ones go on each side. So as you can see, they've got the squealers. These are the squealers, so as the pads wear lower, these little metal things, they actually squeal on the rotor, and they give you an indication of when you need to change them, which is what I was hearing. As you can see, that squealer is perfectly in line with that material, so I was hearing that squealing, which just gave me an indication on what was going on. So what I like to do is just marry them up like that against each other. As you can see, the holes, they all line up. They're the correct size, there's no overlay there or anything. Squealers are slightly different change. That just depends on the brand that you use. That looks good to me, so that one's good to install. Alright, so with those pads double checked, I want to make sure we grab the right ones. And these holes, they line on the outside because they line up with those pins. So we'll just double check there's enough room, which there is. Just. Wriggle it in. It also says there's writing on it. This says four-wheel drive out on the left-hand side. So if you ever get confused, there's usually writing on the outside and it'll indicate where the pad actually goes. So that's one in. Now I've got to move these pistons out and install the other one. So back to grabbing that pry bar or large screwdriver with a bit of rag on it. Just going to slide that in slowly. I'm going to make sure that screwdriver goes right across to the other side of the piston too, so you're getting an even push on the whole piston. If you're just pushing on one side, you don't want to apply any torque to it and sort of twist it out of position. So making sure that screwdriver's all the way through, then pushing it back. It's hard initially, so you can start sort of at the top, so you're not. And then once you can get it all the way through, you can even them up till you think there's enough room. I think that should be fine. And then we'll install this one again. Holes on the outside, brake material on the inside facing the rotor. And as you can see, that's not quite going in, so I need to work those pistons back a tiny bit more. That's what we'll do. Not much, but just enough so it slides in without much effort. There we go, that's perfect. Beautiful. All right, next step is reinstalling those pins. So we'll go top one first. And they have little holes, and those holes, they relate to where that retaining pin holds them in. It's not really a problem now, but it's just good to be mindful of that. That pad's too far in, so I'll just slide it out a little bit. Then I'll slide that one out so the hole lines up and push that pin all the way through. Now with this bottom one, the retaining pin was in there first. So what I'll do is I'll just squeeze that one in place. Oh, that's backwards. So I'll squeeze that one in place. Slide it in, make sure it looks nice, which it does, and then we'll slide that pin in. Beautiful. All right, so final step on this one is installing this pin. So just the same as when we removed it, we just slide it in. There's a small hole there where that piece of wire fits. We slide it in and around, and then we want to line these holes up so that the wire actually fits in the holes. That one looks pretty good there. I might rotate it a little bit. So just grabbing those long nose pliers, just rotating it. And then again, grabbing those pliers, bending it slightly. There we go, in. And this one, the hole isn't quite right, so I'll just slowly rotate it around. Grab that wire and placing it in. Beautiful. All right, that looks pretty good. New pads, there is a bit of play. That's because those pistons are moved all the way back. But once we pump the brakes, those pistons will even out and we should be in business. All right, one thing when I installed that pad there, there's actually there's a shim, a metal shim. If I show you on the old pads, see that metal shim there? I don't know if I'll be able to pull it off. It's on there pretty good. But there is a metal shim on the actual, on the brake pad, and I forgot to install that, so I quickly whipped that out and just slid that shim on there. You can see the two clips. It's important that you install all the parts back, so that's all good to go. Installed that clip back on, and now I'll put the tyre back on. All right, So those pads look pretty good. One final thing I'm going to do is just clean off the brake rotor. I touched it a fair bit. It's pretty warm here today. So I'm just going to wipe off any residue, any sweat, any salt or contaminants. So just spray the rotor. And getting a relatively clean rag and just cleaning that off. Beautiful. Now that's done, just going to slide this tyre out. I'm going to try and line up the studs with the holes before I lift it up. It'll just save any mucking around when I get this heavy tyre in the air. Again, it's a great way to move these larger tyres on and off cars, is getting below them and saving your back. So put that on and spin these nuts on. And I'm just going to lightly tighten them up. These are cone-shaped wheel nuts. So if I show you, as you can see, they're a cone shape and they slide into that hole. So you want to make sure the wheel is not actually touching the stud and up in the air. So when that cone slides in, it's actually making contact with the wheel right the way around the hole. And always opposites with wheel nuts. So started top right, go to bottom left. It's hard, as you can see, the wheel's spinning, so just want to keep track of the ones you tighten up. This is very lightly tightening them up, just so that cone seats properly. Beautiful. Now I'm going to lower the car down. Rod in the hook and just easing it off. There's no need to ease it off too much, just enough so the tyre touches the ground. Now I've done that, I'll just extend this breaker bar and we're going to tighten these wheel nuts up one at a time. Make sure that socket's slid all the way on so you don't round off your nuts. Obviously this job's much easier with a rattle gun, but I don't have one, so this is what they're doing. Now it's definitely recommended that you torque your wheel nuts to the factory specification. I don't have a torque wrench, so I won't be doing that, but these tyres are due for a rotation, so when I take them in, I'll get the boys at the tyre shop to, I mean they have to, but they'll torque them up themselves, and that's booked in this week, so it's only going to last me a few days. And look, you got to change your tyre on the side of the road, this is what you'd be doing anyway, but it is advisable that you take it to a professional if you don't have a torque wrench. Just to save yourself any trouble, especially if you're doing this for a friend or a family member. You don't want it coming back to bite you. So I'll just go around, check them all. Beautiful. Now what I'll do is I'll just come around here, push that cap back on. As you can see, there's actually a bit of liquid that's come out. That would have been due to pushing the pistons back and the brake fluid coming up into this reservoir. You can see if that lid was closed, it would have been a lot harder to push those pistons back out. So what I'll do is I'll come in here, put the car into neutral, just turn it on. and I'll just pump the brake a few times, quite firmly. And that reservoir is still quite full, but if you take it for a drive, I'll keep an eye on it. If I need to, I'll take a few mils out, but it's only just above that max line there, so it's really not much of an issue. Beautiful, so that's the job of changing brake pads on a 2004 Hilux. Pretty straightforward job really. All you need is basic hand tools, and most people carry tools like I use at home, so it can be done at home, in your garage, in your apartment garage like I am here. Good resource to use on older model cars is a Hayes manual. They're available in a lot of different makes and models, not so much in the newer stuff. If you can't find one of these, YouTube's a great resource, and there's a lot of guys doing a lot of great videos. So thanks for watching, and take it easy.